I realized that it was empty and
Yeah.
I was constantly still, even though I supposedly had arrived, it never felt like it. I was supposed to then just be chasing the next goal. Well, now I need to move companies and get a bigger CMO role. And now I need to be in a bigger brand. I need bigger teams. And I realized that I was never actually, all those feelings and fulfillment that I thought would come when I got where I was, it was elusive. And I was never going to feel that way because of how I'd structured my life.
Well, welcome back to the Executive Exhale podcast, folks. So happy to have Jo Stone here. Jo Stone is the founder and CEO of the Balance Institute, and she guides high-achieving women in finding balance, fulfillment, and clarity in their daily lives. It was established in the wake of Jo's own brush with burnout. The Balance Institute provides ambitious women with the tools to reclaim their power, create a life of success on their terms, without the sacrifice. It's important. Through blending neuroscience with ancient wisdom, holistic practices, and a nurturing community to fast-track transformation for lasting change. Jo has received a number of awards. She's recently been named Executive Coach of the Year 2024 at Corporate Vision's Corporate Coaching and Recruitment Awards, and also has taken out titles of the Most Transformative Executive Coach in 2024 from the Insider Australian CEO Excellence Awards and Best Entrepreneur Coaching from Best of Australia's Small Business Awards in recent months. I'm so excited to have you because I think we share a lot in story, and I just look forward to talking to you.
Yeah, sounds great. Thanks for having me.
No problem. So, was doing a little bit of research on your story. I always like to start with the guest's sort of background and what brings them to the work they do. So, to me, it sounds like you had everything on paper. You had all the bells and whistles. You had the career. You had the beautiful family. And yet something was off. So maybe you could take us back to that moment of realization before we get into what you do now.
Yeah, sure. It's a story that I thought was very unique, and since I've moved into this world, realized that it's not that unique. There are many women who feel the way I used to. So, as you said, I had it all on paper, what I thought was the dream life. I was in the C-suite in a US listed company with an Asia Pacific role, teams across 5 countries. So I'd got the career heights to, obviously there's always further to go, but it's like, okay, great. I'm an executive. For me, having sort of Asia was a really big part of my growth. I had a spot on not-for-profit board, which was another career goal that I had. I had 2 young kids. I just built my dream house from scratch, which included chickens and a pond and a pool. I had 2 new cars in the driveway. I had a husband. Like, okay, I've got it all. So what on earth is wrong with me?
Yeah. Why am I not
should
happy?
be happy because I've arrived. This is everything I ever wanted. I would have told you, if you said this is $1 million in what you want, I would have said, yes, this is the hill that I'm climbing. This is the flag that I want to plant of what success is.
Right.
And I realized that it was empty and I was constantly still, even though I supposedly had arrived, it never felt like it. I was supposed to then just be chasing the next goal. Well, now I need to move companies and get a bigger CMO role. And now I need to be in a bigger brand. I need bigger teams. And I realized that I was never actually, all those feelings and fulfillment that I thought would come when I got where I was, it was elusive. And I was never going to feel that way because of how I'd structured my life.
Yeah, I had a very similar experience going through COVID, executive role, public health, emergency management. Same thing. I felt I was making 6 figures. I live in a 4-bedroom house. I have a nice yard. I have all the things, 3 kids, a dog, the whole 9 yards. And just like you, spent way too many summer evenings outside drinking alcohol thinking, what the hell is wrong with me? Like, why can't I just be happy with what's going on? And I just felt like there's this big gap, this big hole. So then, so walk us through that process. You've come to this realization. You're like, hold on, I'm not happy. I don't get it. What was sort of the next step for you? What was the next sort of realization of how you were going to start to move out of this feeling that you were in?
For me, the first piece I had to escape was financial. Because I had a big house, it came with a big mortgage. And I couldn't change jobs because I couldn't, this was pre-COVID, but I couldn't find another place that would match my salary without other sacrifices, without huge amounts of traveling. I was already traveling around Australia at least once a week, internationally every fortnight. So I was away from my little kids a lot. And so we just thought, all right, house prices in our area went a bit stupid. And after 18 months, we thought, what happens if we sold the house? And
Right.
that then gives us financial freedom. It gives us more choice. And so I still remember the night before we put our house up for auction, everyone else had gone to bed. The house was immaculate because it was staged with the furniture, and the books were all color coded and went like this. And I still had at that time, a 3 and a 6-year old. So trying to
Right.
keep a house, open house tidy, it was incredibly stressful.
That.
It was end of year results at work. It was just all the things.
Mhm.
And I remember the night before looking outside. It was a beautiful, warm evening. I still remember it so close, playing my music, looking out at my beautiful water feet that I'd spent hours on Pinterest trying to locate with every plant that I'd planted. And I thought, am I really giving this up? This is what I thought I've
Right.
always wanted. It was almost this kind of ego death of I am now tapping out of the race. I am not going to be chasing this material wealth anymore. And that was really confronting. And I just remember sitting there bawling my eyes out, going, I can't believe my family were doing interventions, as
Yeah.
in, you haven't bought anything else. What are you doing? This was your dream. Why are you selling it? And a lot of my friends were all threatened by what I was doing because I was tapping out of the race and they were still on their hamster wheel. So it was very threatening to them. What do you mean? You've sold your house and you don't have, that's irresponsible.
This
You've
is
got
an option for
children.
us. We can do that.
You've got pet. You mean you can just sell out?
Yeah.
So we sold the house with nowhere else to go. And
Right.
that started to bring back a little more financial freedom. We moved a little further away from the city, downgraded the house from this big 5-bedroom to a 3-bedroom older house. It was still renovated, but it was not as nice.
Mhm.
And that then gave me the freedom to leave my business and to start my own. So that was the next domino to fall. And these dominoes all ended up falling really within a 3-month period. So
It doesn't sound like you gave yourself a whole lot of time there to, and I'm wondering what that process was like for you in terms of going from your 9 to 5, very corporate, 6-figure role likely, going from that to the big house, and then within 3 months you're in this sort of new role, starting to launch a business. I'm wondering what kind of recovery period, or what did the recovery between those 2 phases look like for you? And I say recovery because I feel like that's what it is, because you're kind of on the cusp of burnout. You're sort of, I'm assuming that's probably what you were starting to feel, was this stress was
mm,
starting to mount, right? So I know for me, when I left my 9 to 5, I was essentially, I couldn't do very much for about 6 to 8 weeks. I was exhausted. And so I wonder what that process looked like for you, because I want people who are listening to this to understand that there may be a phase or a transition period between where you are now, where you want to go.
mm.
And I'm just curious of what that looked like for you.
Yeah, I was a very good scholar of the high functioning school of burnout.
Right.
So I wasn't the one who collapsed, although I did end up checking myself into hospital with a suspected autoimmune disease at one point because I thought I was having an MS attack. And that was just my body's way of screaming because I'm blessed with the body I can push. I can survive off not all that much sleep. And so I pushed it a lot. And eventually it just started screaming back at me. It's like, you can't keep pushing me this way. I'm now going to make you go sideways. So I think the last couple of months in my role, I was trying to wrangle for redundancy. And so
Mhm.
I was pulling back a lot. So I was sleeping a lot. And to be honest, though, that period when we'd sold our house, we negotiated a long settlement before we had to move out. And that period was just bliss because it was
Right.
summer. We were enjoying the house. We knew that we had all this money coming in. We didn't know where we were going to go, but there was this beautiful holding pattern. So I think that allowed me to then stabilize my health, my body. I wasn't pushing as hard. I wasn't traveling as much with work. So I was able to almost continue to function while still recovering because all the stress had come off. I didn't know what was next. And my burnout story was very much I had to step into one step for the next one to reveal itself because I wanted to know, okay, if I'm going to start blowing up my life, where's this going? What does it look like on the, where's my Gantt chart? Where's my risk analysis? Where's my traffic light PowerPoint slide, which is how I'd been operating. And I didn't get any of that. And no one ever does. The next step is only revealed after you take the first one.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was very much my journey.
Yeah, it's interesting because when I say I couldn't do very much, I very different. I was high functioning until I wasn't high functioning anymore.
Yes.
So for me, it was a bit of a crash and burn. But if I recall, about 6 months prior to me pulling the retirement plug, And I say retirement, I'm not retired, but I retired in the sense that I pulled my pension out of my public service role that I was in. It was very destabilizing because when I finally pulled that plug, it's as if the relief valve just released and I could just
Mm,
give myself permission to not be
mm,
on anymore. And when
mm,
I did that, it was like my body just went in complete collapse. And when I say that, I
mm,
legitimately, my adrenals stopped functioning properly.
mm,
The weight I had gained over the course of 2 years of stress and overtime and not taking care of myself and not exercising or doing things anymore, meant that I was exhausted and fatigued and had aches and pains. And similar to you, I thought,
mm,
oh, maybe I have fibromyalgia. I have all this, perimenopausal pain coming into the story.
mm,
But it was really my stress story. It was my body.
mm,
And the trigger for me to pull this card is, without going into too much information, I started having issues with my bowels, and I ended up going for a colonoscopy, an emergency one, because we thought, well, maybe I have cancer now. No,
mm,
it was a stress response. My body was just breaking down from the stress.
mm.
So, yeah, thanks for sharing that because I know
Yeah.
that that's a big part of people's stories, and we don't necessarily want to admit that to ourselves, but it's often.
No, and now working with, hundreds of women going through burnout, everybody's experience is unique. We have everyone from the full scale collapse, can't move their bodies, can't talk, can't function, check themselves into hospital, to full scale collapse, to the ones who keep going but just get increasingly hollow and more and find themselves down this bottom of a well because they're so completely disconnected from who they are, but they just become robots, mechanical, functioning through life, and yet just disconnected, no joy, no real feelings, just entirely numb. So everyone's burnout experience is unique, and I think, to your point, it's really important that we share the full spectrum of what it can look like, because nobody else can judge your burnout except you. And the common thread is that they don't want to feel this way anymore. And they know that it's not healthy and it's not the best version of themselves.
Yeah, and I love that you brought in the notion of ego death as well, because there is a part of that that happens.
Mm.
I'm giving up a career that I built over 20
Mhm.
years or 25 years. In my case, I'd been in health and public health and at the executive level and like over the course combined about 30 years. And so you're
Mm.
like, wow, I'm giving up, excuse me,
Mm.
all of that.
Yeah.
It's quite hard. It's quite difficult. So tell us about this transition then. Now you've left, you've moved into this smaller location, you're now starting a new life. Now you're looking at creating your own business. So what did that look like for you?
So at this point in time, I was the only breadwinner because my husband was suffering from all kinds of ongoing health problems and mental health problems. So what I really wanted to start my own business and find something that was scalable, but I had to still provide income, even though the target was less. So I ended up getting a 6-month consulting contract. So my plan was to become a consultant and probably start a consulting business and have other consultants under me. And so I managed to get myself essentially a 6-month consulting gig, which I thought was enough to hold me over for me to then get my own client base and to stop the huge lumpy income, which I couldn't afford. So that was my little hybrid, 1 foot in, still sort of a permanent-ish role. It was in an industry that I hadn't really been exposed to. It was a great brand, so it was a really, really great first step. I was a subcontractor under another contractor. I learned a lot in that and then started getting my own clients at the same time. So by the time that contract ended, I was then in a position to I was working on the side on trying to build more of a digital business. There was an
Mm.
online coaching business, more in the consulting space, not where I am now at all. And so I was juggling all these hats, keeping the consulting going, and I kept that going for probably a good 12 to 18 months. I had a lot of clients that wanted to bring me in for what I call capability uplift. So they bring me in 1 day a week as part of a project, or to sort of take my knowledge and impart it on the others. And that was really where this business ended up being born, because I got to know whether it was, the head of marketing, head of sales, head of customer service, GM of whatever. I was working at that executive level. And the conversations very quickly went from, yeah, okay, this is the strategy for the contact center. Got it. Okay, Joe, I'm really burnt out. What you seem to be okay. You've sold the house. What on earth have you done? You're functioning now. You seem so much happier. talk to me about because I'm exhausted, I'm guilty, I want to step up, but I can't. And it was one week that I'd had 8 different coffees where this same conversation just kept coming again and again, that I came home, went for a run, and this idea literally dropped in my head. What if this could be my business? What if there are all these women like me? And at the time, a lot of these women were also the main breadwinners for their family and trying to be mothers, had often husbands at home or husbands working part-time, and they were just exhausted. And there was so few people like me around where I could go and talk about, I'm trying to get this through my chairman, and I've got this multi-million-dollar budget I'm trying to juggle. And then how do you get your kids to sleep through the night?
Yeah.
I had the mum friends, and then there were the work friends, but often the work friends didn't have kids. And they're going, where's my people who still want to work, but I don't just want a nanny to raise my children, but I don't want to be there all the time either. So I decided, you know what, if there's other me's out there, I can't find them in my local community. I can't find them where I'm working. So what if I start a business and see if I can find them?
So many good nuggets that come out of that piece, talking about the universal nudge, pushing you kind of in that right
Yeah,
direction, right? It's like, yeah,
lots of nudges.
right. And then there's also the idea that, I think it's, there's a famous quote out there that says, it's important to make your mess your message. And it's sort of, you've pulled
Mm,
all of your experience into what you're doing. And I also love the notion of creating community, that you were thinking, well, I don't have a community. Where are my people? Well, I'll
mm,
create one by creating my own business. So I think that's
mm,
fascinating and brilliant that you went ahead and did that. So then,
mm.
so then obviously people were coming up to you and saying, how did you do this? What was sort of give us a bit of a flavor of that conversation? How did you start having those conversations with people so that you think, okay, I'm starting to have clients. How am I helping these people? So what were some of the things that kind of rose to the top for you?
Yeah, I had a lot of limiting beliefs about being a coach.
Right.
I was like, no, I'm a consultant. Give me 100 people, post-it notes and black patent high heels and a suit, and I'm rocking it, like completely confident, no problems. But talking to somebody about their relationship or their life, who am I to be giving that advice? No, a life coach is somebody who, you know, thumps through fields of sunflowers wearing a flower garland on their head, and they live in a hippie camper van and they have no money and no structure. And that's not me. I'm not one of those people. I had so much judgment on life coaches because I'd never met anyone like me. I'd never met anyone who could put a bulleted point list together and give me key outcomes. Everything I watched was fluff and let's dance to the moon and put our crystals together. I'm like, I've come from financial services. Like, I'm used to dealing with risk and lawyers. I can't talk your language. So I had to really decide that the universe just kept nudging me and nudging me and nudging me. And I ended up then going into really the field of neuroscience. And so
Mm.
I became fascinated with, okay, what have I done? And one of my big skills in corporate was to actually go into a department or a product or a marketing campaign and pull it apart and put it back together again in a way that made sense. So that's what my job ended up being, if you were to pull it right back at its core. So I took my corporate skill set and applied it to my life. I pulled my life apart and went, okay, what are all these beliefs that I have? I started doing a lot of personal development, whether it was through Tony Robbins or any free online event I could get. I was just this consuming machine, reading books like crazy. I discovered a lot of the neuroscience people like Joe Dispenza and Bruce Lipton, and that sort of scientific realm was what helped me open up to quantum physics. And it was then I started to understand how my brain worked. I was able to pull apart, okay, well, this is conditioning. These aren't my beliefs. This was put in there by my upbringing. Okay, so what do I actually believe? What does success mean to me? And then all these beautiful frameworks, because I'd been on every leadership program you could ever imagine. I'd been in high potential programs my entire career, lots
Right.
of, offsite leadership conferences. And I kept all those folders and manuals and books and went back through all the leadership. I went, okay, this one made sense, but I never did anything with it. How do I make that practical? So I started essentially, I didn't realize at the time, but building my own IP. So building my own frameworks that helped me understand myself and the steps that I took to get out of my high functioning burnout and actually recalibrate and build a life that meant something to me. I had to learn about emotions because I was completely numb. And then started putting together frameworks and started doing some coaching just of people one-on-one, and started using some of them and testing myself. Then I went on a coaching program through somebody else that I was working with, and then went, okay, maybe I'm good at this. I just need to create a new identity that I can still talk to lawyers and accountants and corporates, and I can have bullet points in my information and I can still be in integrity as a coach.
It's interesting you say that, because one of the biggest resistance that I personally had was similar to you. Your story is, although I wasn't in the corporate world, I was in public service, but nonetheless, it was very corporate-like in how we behaved. Same thing, spreadsheets, slide decks, all the things, and strategic planning and budgeting and all that. So when I went into this world of coaching and wellness coaching, wellness I put in quotations, I thought, how the heck am I going to bridge the gap between the high level exec, very left brained, analytical, strategic brain, and bring them on side with getting them to understand that if they just connect with that heart-centered emotional sense and somehow find a way to bridge it, there's magic in there. There's magic in there in terms of controlling your life and what goes on around you. I had a really hard time. So thank you for mentioning that, because I think there's a lot of people out there that are execs that are thinking about becoming coaches and think, how am I going to bridge this? Because what I did at work and what I'm going to be doing as a coach are not necessarily the same thing. They don't necessarily fit. Because like you, I'm not a as we put it, the granola cruncher dance in the sand kind of person. But then again, I'm the first person to tell you that I'm outside earthing and grounding now that I would have never said 10 years ago, right? The methods I use in heart science, the heart science from the Heart Math Institute that I use in HeartPod, that's the kind of stuff that I bring to the table now. And it's just so different, vastly different from where so thank you for sharing that, because it's a very similar story that way. What is the customer journey like for your clients? What can they expect if they connect with you?
Yeah, and I've got clients all over the world. So that's the beauty now of in a post-COVID world. There's no limits. I've had people from as far as you can go in northern Canada to South America, Europe, and that's the beauty of the world digital now. I've got a signature 12-week program, and I bring people in to ultimately help them achieve 3 core things, which is what most people are looking for. The first pillar of what they need to learn to do is to focus. Most women who come to me are procrastinating, they're perfectionists, they're saying yes to everything, they're overthinking, they're paralyzed, completely overwhelmed. And so we've got to actually get them some brain space to function and to shut their brain off and to stop drowning in the list. So that's the first phase of what we have to do. And yes, there's time management strategies in there. There's a lot of neuroscience and understanding how their brain works, but there's the introduction of these things called feelings and how you're numbing them and how they're hijacking you and things that sounds like you talk about as well. Once we've got them back some focus and they're now reclaiming some energy that's been leaking, the second pillar of what we have to do is really, I use the phrase weed their garden. So everything stems from our limiting beliefs. And until you can understand where they've come from, how they've hijacked you, learn how to actually let them go and move on and create new beliefs that are actually for the life you want, they're at the root of everything. So that's a beautiful journey we take people on. That really, I've had many people who've come to me have done therapy in the past for a variety of reasons. And they love working with me because as a coach, and you probably find the same thing, we don't have to sit there for 6 months and talk about your childhood to actually get you outcomes. We can really cut through all the fluff, all the talking, and just get you the truth of what's going on. And women who come to me are already self-aware. So they know their patterns. They usually know where they come from. It's now just about giving them the tools to put it all together and for them to move forward. And then as they've now come out feeling more in control of their mind and where everything's come from, and they're learning how to let feelings go and process them and become, we call it emotionally constipated. So we free them from their emotions that have been blocking them. The next phase is really an identity shift. And that is moving from being a get shit done person, which is how most women are showing up in the world, and really becoming a woman of influence. It's where they want to have impact. It's where they want to really expand their area of influence and be able to show up that much more powerfully in all areas of life. So that's the final identity shift that we can't do until we've done the other precursor work.
Love that. It's such a very succinct and it's so logical, but yet so heart-centered at the same time, right? It's a very nice
Yeah.
blend but I can see where the corporate mind kind of like, we're gonna do this, then we're gonna do this, then we're gonna do this. It
Mhm.
all makes sense because nothing is necessarily it's similar to a program that I've just developed called the Excel, method, and it's similar because they're different pillars, but yet they're interlinked together, and I don't think
Yeah.
and I would imagine that if yours is similar to mine, you don't have to do it in sequence. One influences the other, but it's nice to have
Mhm.
that sequence, if that makes sense, right? Because then it kind of
Yeah.
logically moves you through the steps. I love that. What are some of the more powerful outcomes you've seen as a result of putting people through this process?
Yeah, I mean, there's the typical ones that you would expect. We get a lot of promotions. We get regular 40, 50% pay rises because most people are operating well under their capacity and capability. But some of the funner outcomes, we've had people start up new hobbies. We've had
Mhm.
people quit their jobs and, rediscover horse riding that they forgot they loved when they were 8. So these beautiful passions. But one of my favorite outcomes is we have at least 16 new babies in the world because their mums came and did our program, whether they're now second and third children because the mum only thought that she could ever cope with one,
Right.
or we've got at least 5 families who weren't planning on having kids because they didn't think they could cope and they were so stressed with our kids who have
Mhm.
now fallen pregnant. And we've had 7 years of unexplained infertility. And in week 7 of my program, she fell pregnant. So the power of this work in
Yeah.
bringing in new life and the ripple effect on families, communities, teams is just continues to blow my mind.
Just fascinating. I've recently started a new thing with the podcast where I do like a lightning round of questions. I wonder if you'd be open to that. They're just like really quick questions that are
Sure.
okay. So let's just try this. It's kind of fun. So the first one is, what's one thing that you no longer apologize for since you've done this work?
Taking up space.
Oh, I love that. God. What's one habit you swear by for your nervous system health?
Ooh, for me, meditation and journaling.
I love meditation. It's funny because meditation, people think you need to be chanting in some corner somewhere. What's your definition of meditation? Just so that folks can hear what you think of it. What does it look like?
So I had to find some, let's call them, I don't know, call them meditative influences that I
Yep,
could relate to. So
yeah,
actually, one of my favorites is Canadian. Don't know if you've heard of Sarah Blondin.
I have. Yes,
So, yeah, so I had to go into meditation through talking meditation. The whole thought of sitting in silence while a bell gonged, I just wanted to scratch my eyes out. So, yeah, that and then my relationship with silence has drastically improved. I used to always have something in my ears, a podcast, an audiobook, music. Now I get in the car and it drives my family bonkers because if I'm in there alone, the volume goes straight down and I drive in silence. I give myself space to think for ideas to drop in and I walk in silence, even though I put my headphones in, there's nothing in them. It's just that no one talks to me. Really cultivating that space in my life has been really important.
great tips. Great tips. What's your version of balance today?
It's always changing
Mm,
depending on what season I'm in. So to me, a lot of people think balance is 50-50, but to me, it's about moving and flexing with what matters in this moment. And then I have to more juggle that with all my other priorities.
What's your favorite guilty pleasure? What's the thing that you really, you think, oh, I shouldn't do that, but I'm going to? It can be entertainment. It could be a song. It could be music. It could be anything. What's your guilty pleasure?
I do like a good bit of, my husband calls it, was it mummy porn on television, like Tudor novels or the
Yeah.
Bridgertons or
Oh,
period porn they
yes.
call it. So
Yeah.
a good bit of period drama is my thing. But we're recording this near Easter, and I'm normally pretty disciplined with my food, but those little tiny chocolate Easter eggs are my kryptonite. I just cannot stop eating them. They're my guilty pleasure. Once a
Yeah.
year, I devour those without guilt.
That's awesome. And the last question is, what are you saying yes to more of these days? We often think about, well, what are we going to say no to? But what are you saying yes to these days?
I'm saying yes to a lot more visibility.
Mm,
At the moment is one of my core pillars for the year. So really putting myself out there, being more authentic, sharing more of my story, hence more of these podcast interviews. I had a post on LinkedIn that went viral recently that got 1.6 million impressions. And
Wow.
so, yeah.
Oh, that's
And that
awesome.
was me just having a rant, and it
Yeah.
unlocked media opportunities. My husband and I are on the radio. We've
Amazing.
had interviews with other countries. So yeah, just not being afraid to be seen in my mess, in all my authentic glory, and that can be equally exciting and terrifying at the same time.
I love that. I love that. So if someone's listening, you're going to start wrapping up here. If somebody's listening to this and they've heard your story and they're thinking, yeah, that's me. I'm running on empty. What's one doable thing that you want to provide as a tidbit of advice today that can help that woman, besides contacting you, obviously? What is one tangible thing that they could start doing today to help themselves?
I would say finding 1 minute of silence in your day. If you can just put everything down and stare out the window and stop doing just for 60 seconds. And in that time, take a couple of deep breaths
Mhm.
and have the sense and bring in the habit of just checking in with yourself. What do I need right now? And usually it's the bathroom or some water or some food. It might be a hug, it might be just some more silence, it might be a nap, but learning that art of not just functioning from to-do lists and hustle, but really giving yourself that grace of checking in with what you need is a game changer.
I love that. Beautiful. So, Joe, where can people find you? By the way, folks, the links will be in the show notes, so you'll be able to find all of her connections there. But just for sake of argument, just share with the audience where they can find you.
Yeah, I have my own podcast too, which is called Balance and Beyond. So they can find me on all podcast platforms. And
Beautiful.
also balanceinstitute.com is my website where they can see various programs. I run free workshops, more about my story, and get in touch if they'd like.
Beautiful. Thank you again for being on the show. I really appreciate having you.
Great. Thanks for having me.
So if this conversation hit home, folks, I'd love to share it with someone else who might be quietly burning under the scenes or behind the scenes of any kind of burnout or stress management thing. So if you're ready to stop getting through your days and start creating something sustainable, either check out the links down below to check out Joe's information, or you can go to www.executiveexcelaswell.com. And yeah, you don't have to figure this out by yourself. My last thing is listen to Joe, listen to myself. You can get over this stress. It is possible to move through this. It is possible to recreate something for yourself, and it is possible to reconnect to yourself. So just don't think that you have to do this by yourself. Reach out to people like Joe, reach out to people like me, and we'll try to help you get there. Anyways, until next time, folks, really appreciate you being here. If you like, subscribe, follow, do all the things, it helps get this content out. It's free. It doesn't cost you anything, and it helps get out to other people who need this information. And until next time, folks, stay grounded, stay inspired, and remember to exhale.